The Senate Judiciary Committee chamber grew silent as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a freshman Democrat from Texas, adjusted her microphone. Across from her sat Kash Patel, the controversial nominee for FBI director under former President Trump. His confident expression was about to fade. What unfolded in the next 30 seconds would send shockwaves through Washington and leave millions of Americans watching in disbelief. "Mr. Patel," Crockett began, her voice calm yet commanding, "you claim to be qualified to lead the FBI. Tell me, what's harder to find, proof of your real law enforcement experience or truth in your memoir?" The room erupted. Patel's self-assured smile vanished. This wasn't another routine confirmation hearing. It was a public reckoning broadcast nationwide. Before diving into this explosive exchange that's dominating headlines, be sure to subscribe and tap the notification bell to stay updated on major political moments shaping our democracy. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. This story has captured attention across all 50 states. To understand the weight of this moment, you need to know who these two figures are and why their confrontation symbolizes something far larger than a confirmation hearing. Jasmine Crockett rose to national attention in 2023 as the representative for Texas's 30th District. At just 42, she brought a rare blend of legal expertise, street intelligence, and no-nonsense clarity to Congress. Before entering politics, she worked as a civil rights attorney, defending those who couldn't defend themselves. Crockett had mastered reading people, spotting deception, and exposing it with precision. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, she learned early that success required both intellect and grit. Her parents, both educators, taught her the power of knowledge, but her neighborhood taught her resilience. At Baylor Law School, she graduated with honors, then served in the Texas House of Representatives, where she quickly became known as a fearless debater. Crockett wasn't just tough, she was strategic. She understood that in modern politics, being right wasn't enough. You had to be memorable. And today, in that Senate hearing, she was about to create one of those unforgettable moments. Kash Patel, on the other hand, represented much of what Crockett had spent her career opposing. At 44, he had built his career not through merit, but through connections to power. Though he held a law degree and had served briefly as a federal prosecutor, his real rise began when he aligned himself closely with Donald Trump. Patel gained recognition as a staffer for Representative Devin Nunes, where he helped write the controversial Nunes memo aimed at discrediting the Russia investigation. From there, his career skyrocketed, not due to expertise, but loyalty. During Trump's presidency, he held several senior positions, including Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense, despite having no military background. His 2023 memoir, Government Gangsters, read more like a political manifesto than a policy book. In it, Patel pledged to clean house at the FBI, firing those who had opposed Trump. Critics said it laid out plans to turn the Bureau into Trump's personal enforcement arm. He even listed 60 people he labeled as part of the deep state, whom he wanted investigated or prosecuted. The stakes of this hearing couldn't be higher. If confirmed, Patel would lead the FBI, the nation's top law enforcement agency, with access to every investigation, every classified file, every secret. His critics feared he'd weaponize the Bureau against Trump's opponents. His supporters argued he'd finally purge corruption. But beyond politics, the hearing reflected a deeper conflict, a clash between two visions of America. Patel represented a system where loyalty trumped competence and the law bent to serve one man's will. Crockett represented a new generation that demanded transparency, fairness, and accountability in government. The hearing room was packed. Cameras from every major news outlet rolled as social media buzzed with anticipation. Everyone expected sparks, and they weren't wrong. Senator Dick Durbin, the committee chair, called the session to order, but all eyes were on Crockett. She sat composed, a folder of documents neatly stacked before her. Patel occasionally glanced at them, visibly uneasy. "Mr. Patel," Durbin began, "you've been nominated for one of the most critical positions in U.S. law enforcement. The FBI director must be impartial, above reproach, and dedicated to the rule of law. Can you assure this committee that you meet those standards?" Patel leaned forward with a rehearsed response. "Senator, I've spent my career defending justice and protecting Americans. My record speaks for itself. As a prosecutor, I convicted terrorists. As a congressional staffer, I fought corruption. As part of President Trump's administration, I worked to keep our country safe. A few Republican senators nodded in approval. Senator Josh Hawley even smiled. But Crockett wasn't convinced. She had studied every line of Patel's record and was ready to challenge each exaggeration. When her turn came, Crockett didn't waste time. Mr. Patel, you just stated that you convicted terrorists as a federal prosecutor. How many terrorism cases did you personally lead to conviction? Patel hesitated. I was part of the National Security Division. That's not what I asked. Crockett interrupted sharply. How many cases did you personally lead? Well, I was involved in several. The answer, she said, flipping through her papers, is 1. And you were the junior prosecutor, not the lead. Yet in your book, you call yourself a veteran terrorism prosecutor. Do you think that's honest? The room grew tense. Patel's supporters shifted uncomfortably. Congresswoman, I think my record, your record, Crockett cut in, is exactly what I'd like to discuss. Let's talk about your time as Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense. You held that role for just 2 months, correct? Yet in your memoir, you describe your crucial role in major military decisions. Can you name one operation you personally directed? Patel's face reddened. I participated in high-level discussions. Being in the room isn't the same as making decisions, Mr. Patel, she replied evenly. Now let's move to your book, Government Gangsters. You published a list of 60 people you called the Deep State, career FBI and Justice Department officials. If confirmed as FBI director, what exactly do you plan to do with those individuals? The air grew heavy. Everyone in the room recognized it, the question that would define the hearing. If Patel answered that he planned to investigate them, he'd be admitting his intent to use the FBI for political retaliation. And in that moment, the balance of power in the room shifted. If he backed down, he'd risk angering Trump and his supporters. Patel tried to walk a fine line. I believe in accountability, he said. That's not an answer, Crockett replied sharply. Let's be specific. Lisa Page, you mention her in your book. She's a former FBI lawyer who sent private text messages critical of Trump. She's already been investigated, cleared of wrongdoing, and left the bureau. Yet she's on your list. What crime do you believe she committed that deserves further investigation? The silence that followed was heavy. Even Patel's Republican allies looked uneasy. Senator Mitt Romney frowned while Senator Susan Collins scribbled notes. Patel hesitated. I think all Americans deserve to know the truth. Let's talk about truth, Mr. Patel, Crockett said, her tone rising. In your book, you claim the 2020 election was stolen. You offer no proof, only conspiracy theories dismissed by every court that reviewed them, including those with Trump-appointed judges. Are you telling this committee that, as FBI director, you'd investigate disproven election claims? I never said, page 47 of your book, Mr. Patel. Shall I read it aloud? Crockett interrupted. The crowd murmured. Photographers snapped pictures as Patel's discomfort became obvious. Crockett wasn't done. She was just beginning. Let's move on to January 6th, she said. You've described the prosecutions of those charged that day as politically motivated. These are individuals who attacked officers, broke into the Capitol, and threatened the vice president. Are you suggesting that, if appointed, you'd drop these cases? Patel was sweating now, despite the cool air. I believe in equal justice. Equal justice? Crockett repeated with a humorless laugh. In your book, you say you'd target journalists who reported on Trump's classified documents case. Since when is journalism a crime in America, Mr. Patel? Republicans tried to interject. The witness should be allowed to answer, Senator Ted Cruz insisted. He's not answering, Senator Cruz. He's avoiding, Crockett shot back. Let me remind him. She lifted another document. Here's a transcript from your podcast 3 months ago. You said, quote, the FBI needs to be gutted. Fire the top layer, maybe 3 or 4 layers. The FBI employs around 35,000 people, Mr. Patel. How many are you planning to fire? I was speaking metaphorically, Patel said weakly. You gave specific numbers. That's not a metaphor, that's a plan. And who would replace these career agents? Let me guess, people loyal to Trump? The Democrats nodded in agreement. Senator Elizabeth Warren smiled slightly. Senator Bernie Sanders seemed ready to applaud. Crockett remained poised but relentless. Mr. Patel, you've never managed more than a congressional staff of 12. The FBI has 35,000 employees, a $10 billion budget, and field offices nationwide. Can you name the Bureau's main divisions and their functions? Patel opened his mouth, then shut it again. He looked toward his lawyers, but this wasn't a question they could answer. The silence said it all. He was failing on live television. Let me help you, Crockett said smoothly. The FBI has 6 major divisions: criminal investigation, counterterrorism, counterintelligence, science and technology, information technology, and human resources, each with multiple subdivisions. You didn't know that, did you? You want to lead the FBI, but you don't even know how it's organized. Patel tried to recover. I would learn. You would learn? Crockett repeated. Mr. Patel, this isn't an entry-level job. You're asking the American people to trust you with their safety, security, and civil liberties. And your answer is that you'll learn on the job? The gallery murmured louder. Even the security officers seemed drawn in. Reporters were, typing furiously, posting updates that were already spreading online. But here's what truly concerns me, Crockett said, lowering her tone. It's not just your inexperience or partisanship. It's your fundamental misunderstanding of the FBI's role. The Bureau isn't meant to serve any president. It serves the American people, all of them, regardless of politics. The room fell completely silent. You've made it clear in your book and interviews that you see the FBI as a weapon against Trump's enemies. You've got a list, a plan, but you lack the qualifications, the temperament, and the integrity for the job. The atmosphere was electric. Crockett had been methodically building to this. She pulled out a thick folder. Patel tensed immediately. Mr. Patel, she began, calm but cutting. You call yourself a truth teller. Let's examine that. She opened the folder. The sound of paper filled the room. In 2017, while working for Congressman Nunes, you said you personally reviewed FISA applications at the Justice Department. But DOJ records show you never entered the building on those dates. How do you explain that? Patel's lawyer leaned in, but Patel waved him off. I reviewed summaries. Summaries aren't the same as original documents, Mr. Patel. Let's continue. In 2019, you claimed to be part of the team that killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Defense Department records show you were in Washington, D.C. that day, nowhere near the operation. Would you like to explain that? Someone in the gallery gasped audibly. Senator Durbin tapped his gavel for order. I was involved in the planning, Patel stammered. Being in the building isn't the same as being involved, Crockett replied evenly. And here's my favorite one. She held up a highlighted page. You wrote that you were nearly killed in Afghanistan as a public defender, describing rockets landing just feet away. But military records show that during your 2-week visit, there were no rocket attacks on any base you visited. Not one. The room erupted. Reporters scrambled to tweet the revelation. Even Republican senators looked stunned. Romney covered his mouth. Collins shook her head. That's not how I remember it, Patel muttered. You remember wrong, or you lied. Which is it? Crockett demanded. Patel's face drained of color. His hands trembled as he reached for his water. His lawyers whispered urgently, but it was too late. Mr. Patel, Crockett continued firmly, the FBI director must have unquestionable integrity, trusted by Congress, law enforcement, and the public. You've lied about your experience, your accomplishments, and even basic facts. Why? Should anyone trust you with the FBI? Patel tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Congresswoman, he managed weakly. You're taking things out of context. Crockett leaned forward. Let me give you context, Mr. Patel. The context is that you're a habitual exaggerator, at best, and a chronic liar at worst. You've built your career telling powerful people what they want to hear. You're unfit to run a local police department, let alone the FBI. She paused, locking eyes with him, and delivered the line that would dominate the news cycle for days. Mr. Patel, You claim you're qualified to lead the FBI. But tell me, which is harder to find? Evidence of your law enforcement experience or the truth in your memoir? Because from where I'm sitting, both appear to be pure fiction. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even scattered applause before the guards intervened. Republicans looked stunned, some furious, others resigned. Democrats tried not to smile, but their satisfaction was evident. Patel opened his mouth, but no words came. His polished image had just collapsed live on national television, dismantled by a freshman congresswoman from Texas. That's not... You're mischaracterizing, he stuttered. Crockett leaned back, calm and composed. Mr. Patel, I've spent my career as a civil rights attorney. I've exposed lies and defended truth, and in all my years, I've never seen anyone so unqualified try to fake their way into a position of such importance. Turning to the committee, she concluded, the FBI director's role is too vital for on-the-job learning, too sacred for partisanship, and far too important for someone who can't be honest about their own record. Senator Durbin cleared his throat, trying to restore order. Mr. Patel, would you like to respond to the Congresswoman's questions? Patel looked at his lawyers, both visibly shaken. One whispered to him, and Patel finally spoke. Senator, the Congresswoman is misinterpreting events and taking things out of context. I stand by my record and my qualifications. It was weak, and everyone knew it. Even his supporters seemed deflated. The hearing was over, and so was Patel's credibility. Crockett wasn't about to let him off easily. Which part am I misinterpreting, Mr. Patel? The part where you claim to review documents you never saw? The operations you said you were part of but weren't? Or the rocket attack that never actually happened? Patel tried to stay calm. I respectfully disagree with your characterizations. Facts aren't characterizations, Mr. Patel, Crockett replied evenly. They're facts, and the fact remains, you're not qualified for this position. The exchange continued for several minutes, but everyone in the room understood it was over. Patel had been thoroughly exposed. His responses grew defensive and vague, his composure slipping with each question. His shoulders slumped, his eyes avoided contact, and his once confident voice now sounded uncertain. A few senators attempted to rescue him. Senator Ted Cruz stepped in, redirecting the conversation. Isn't it true, Congresswoman, that you oppose anyone President Trump nominates? Crockett didn't flinch. Senator Cruz, I oppose unqualified nominees, no matter who nominates them. If President Trump had selected someone with genuine experience, integrity, and competence, we'd be having a completely different discussion. Senator Josh Hawley tried a new line of defense. Mr. Patel, don't you agree that the FBI needs reform? Patel seized the question eagerly. Yes, Senator, absolutely. I believe, Crockett cut in smoothly. Believing in reform and being capable of carrying it out are two different things. Senator Hawley may believe NASA deserves more funding, but that doesn't make him an astronaut. Laughter rippled through the gallery. Even some senators couldn't hide their amusement. The analogy hit hard, simple, sharp, and undeniable. As the hearing went on, Patel's nomination began to look increasingly fragile. Republican senators who were once expected to support him now seemed uncertain. Senator Collins was overheard telling an aide, "This is worse than I expected." Senator Romney remained stone-faced, silently taking notes but revealing nothing. Democrats, on the other hand, were energized. Building on Crockett's questioning, they pressed Patel on inconsistencies in his book, his limited leadership experience, and his vague plans for reforming the Bureau. Each question eroded his credibility further, making him appear smaller and less prepared for the role. The most revealing moment came when Senator Durbin posed a straightforward question. Mr. Patel, after hearing the concerns raised today, do you still believe you're the right person for this position? Patel hesitated. For a brief second, doubt flickered across his face. Then he forced himself to sit up straight. Yes, Senator, I do. But that single pause told the story. Everyone had seen it, the hesitation, the uncertainty, and everyone knew what it meant. Even Patel himself seemed aware that he wasn't fit for the job. When the hearing broke for recess, the hallway outside turned chaotic. Reporters swarmed Congresswoman Crockett, firing questions and shoving microphones toward her. She remained composed and direct, giving short, measured responses that were sure to dominate the evening news. "I simply asked Mr. Patel about his record," she said. "The American people deserve an FBI director who tells the truth." Meanwhile, Patel hurried past the crowd, his aides forming a barrier around him. One reporter shouted, "Mr. Patel, how do you respond to Congresswoman Crockett's statements?" He didn't answer, disappearing into a side room without a word. Online, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The hashtag #Crockett destroys Patel began trending within minutes. The clip of Crockett's complete fiction line spread across every major platform, shared millions of times within the first hour. Memes followed instantly, using Patel's shocked expression as the latest symbol of political downfall. Pundits across the spectrum agreed on one point: Patel's performance had been disastrous. Even conservative commentators on Fox News conceded he had taken a beating. CNN called it one of the most devastating hearings in recent memory. MSNBC simply replayed the clips repeatedly, needing little narration. But the most revealing reaction came from Trump himself, normally quick to defend his allies on social media. This time he said nothing. Hours passed with no post, no statement, no Truth Social message. According to insiders, he was furious while watching the hearing, reportedly shouting at the television as Patel struggled to defend himself. Why hadn't he prepared for this? When the senators returned from recess, the mood in the hearing room had completely shifted. What began as a potentially tense but routine confirmation session had devolved into a political disaster. Patel sat at the witness table looking noticeably smaller, deflated. His team of lawyers and advisors appeared stunned, uncertain about their next move. Meanwhile, Crockett remained composed, calmly reviewing her notes. She still had more material ready if needed, though she sensed it wouldn't be necessary. The damage was already done. The nomination, for all intents and purposes, was finished, even if the official acknowledgement would take a few more days. As proceedings resumed, Republican senators began subtly backing away from Patel. Their questions turned perfunctory, lacking conviction. Senator Graham, once considered one of Patel's strongest allies, limited his inquiries to procedural matters about the FBI, carefully avoiding controversy. On the other side, Democratic senators, encouraged by Crockett's sharp questioning, pressed further. Senator Warren raised issues about Patel's financial disclosures, pointing out inconsistencies. Senator Booker challenged his views on civil liberties, prompting Patel to admit he supported expanded surveillance measures that even some Republicans found concerning. Still, everyone was waiting for Crockett's final turn. When she spoke again, the room went completely silent. She studied Patel for a long moment before asking, "Mr. Patel, you've written a book titled Government Gangsters. You've accused lifelong public servants of being criminals and promised to clean house at the FBI. So my question is simple. Who's the real gangster here? The career professionals who've dedicated their lives to this country? Or the man who falsifies his record to gain power he's unfit to hold?" Patel's voice was barely audible. "I stand by my record, Congresswoman." "Your fictional record," Crockett replied evenly. No further questions. As the hearing wrapped up, the political shockwave Jasmine Crockett had unleashed began to ripple through Washington. Moments after the gavel fell, the Capitol corridors buzzed with disbelief, admiration, and quiet alarm. The first public sign of Patel's collapse came from an unlikely source, Senator Lindsey Graham. Once among Patel's most vocal defenders, he was caught on a hot mic telling an aide, "Well, that's dead in the water. Trump's going to be furious." When pressed by reporters later, Graham attempted to downplay his comment, but the damage was irreversible. If even Graham was backing away, Patel's nomination was effectively finished. Within an hour, 3 Republican senators who had been reliable yes votes announced they needed more time to review Patel's qualifications. In Washington terms, That meant they were searching for a diplomatic way to vote no without openly opposing Trump. Senator Susan Collins issued a statement expressing serious concerns about the discrepancies highlighted by Congresswoman Crockett. Senator Romney was more blunt, saying, "Honesty is a basic requirement for any position of public trust, especially one as critical as FBI director." Online, the fallout was immediate and enormous. The clip of Crockett's complete fiction remark amassed over 50 million views within 6 hours. It sparked a wave of memes, with Patel's stunned expression edited into everything from courtroom parodies to the infamous "This is fine" burning room meme. Twitter users wasted no time creating a Kash Patel fiction generator, an online meme tool that mixed his exaggerated claims into absurd stories. One viral version read, "I was there when we captured bin Laden while reviewing FISA warrants during a rocket attack I survived in my DC office." Celebrity reactions quickly poured in. Mark Hamill tweeted, "I've played fictional characters all my life, but even Luke Skywalker had more believable credentials than Kash Patel." Stephen King added, "I write fiction for a living, and even I couldn't imagine a character this openly dishonest making it this far." Even typically apolitical figures joined in, with Taylor Swift posting, "Tell me you're unqualified without telling me you're unqualified, the Kash Patel hearing challenge." But the most consequential reactions weren't public. They came from behind closed doors, inside the White House and Mar-a-Lago. Multiple sources reported that Trump had watched the hearing live, growing visibly frustrated as Patel struggled. "He was yelling at the TV," one insider said anonymously. "He kept shouting, 'Fight back!' Why isn't he fighting back?" When Crockett delivered her complete fiction line, Trump reportedly threw the remote. His silence afterward was telling. Normally, Trump would defend his nominee within minutes. This time it took 4 hours. When he finally posted on Truth Social, his tone was uncharacteristically muted. Kash Patel is a fighter who has been treated very unfairly by the radical left Democrats. We'll see what happens. The lack of his usual adjectives, greatest, best, perfect, was noticed. By that evening, the political maneuvering had begun. Patel's allies leaked to friendly media that he'd been ambushed by Crockett's gotcha questions. But even Fox News anchors struggled to defend him. When Tucker Carlson suggested Patel had been railroaded, his guest, a former FBI official, corrected him. "Tucker," she asked him about claims from his own book. "That's not an ambush. That's accountability." The next morning, newspaper editorials were nearly unanimous. Even typically conservative outlets were critical. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "Mr. Patel's testimony raises serious doubts about his honesty and competence. The Senate should reject this nomination." The New York Times stated bluntly, "Jasmine Crockett performed a public service by revealing Kash Patel as a fabulist whose relationship with truth is casual at best." Even the New York Post, usually a Trump ally, ran the headline, "Fiction writer Patel's FBI dreams go up in smoke." Political analysts began discussing the broader impact. On CNN, Van Jones called it a masterclass in oversight. He added, "Crockett didn't just dismantle Patel. She exposed the flaw in Trump's approach to leadership. Loyalty over competence. Fiction over fact." Conservative commentator David Frum agreed, "This is what happens when loyalty replaces qualification." The legal community echoed the criticism. Former FBI directors from both parties issued statements expressing alarm. James Comey tweeted, "The FBI deserves better." Robert Mueller, through a spokesperson, added, "The integrity of law enforcement requires leaders whose own integrity is beyond question." Law professors quickly began using the hearing as a teaching example. Harvard's Lawrence Tribe called it a textbook cross-examination, precise, evidence-based, and calm. Yale Law School even added the transcript to its trial advocacy course. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's profile skyrocketed. Her Twitter following grew by over 1 million in a single day. She received invitations from nearly every major news network, but appeared on only a few, focusing on the importance of qualifications and integrity. "This isn't personal," she told Rachel Maddow. "It's about standards. Americans deserve leaders who are qualified, honest, and loyal to the rule of law, not to any one party." Her composure only strengthened her image. Even Republicans privately praised her professionalism. She could have turned it into theater, one GOP senator admitted off the record. Instead, she handled it like a prosecutor presenting facts. And that's what made it so devastating. The hearing's effects spread quickly. Other Trump nominees faced renewed scrutiny. Senators began demanding documentation and tougher vetting, what journalists soon called the Crockett Standard. 3 days later, the inevitable happened. Kash Patel withdrew his nomination, saying he didn't want to be a distraction. Insiders later confirmed Trump had ordered the withdrawal after several GOP senators said they couldn't back him. Notably, Patel's statement didn't defend his record or deny Crockett's points. It only blamed partisan politics. Trump's response was typically brief, but bitter. Kash Patel has been treated unfairly by the Democrats and fake news. He would have been a great FBI director, but the deep state won't allow it. His decision not to attack Crockett directly was viewed as acknowledgement of how effective she'd been. The fallout continued. Patel's publisher announced it would review factual claims in Government Gangsters. Podcasts that had featured him added disclaimers. One even re-recorded an apology for not fact-checking. Congressional Democrats, emboldened by Crockett's example, vowed stricter vetting for all nominees. When we do our homework and demand answers, we can stop unqualified nominees, said Senator Schumer. Republicans scrambled for damage control. Some blamed Patel's poor preparation. Others faulted the White House vetting process. We can't go through this again, one GOP senator told Politico. The next nominee better have real experience and a clean record. Crockett's career, meanwhile, took off. No longer a freshman from Texas, she was now seen as a rising national figure, compared to stars like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Katie Porter. Yet she stayed grounded. Asked what advice she had for new members of Congress, she replied, "Do your homework. Prepare thoroughly. You're not there to go viral. You're there to serve and uphold integrity." Political strategists studied her performance. She didn't grandstand, one noted. She just asked solid questions and let Patel undermine himself. GOP strategists warned their candidates to check their resumes and verify all claims. The Crockett treatment, as they called it, means you'd better have proof for every line in your bio. Universities also took notice. Professors cited the hearing as a model for disciplined oversight and fact-based questioning. Crockett received speaking invitations from major institutions, a fellowship from Harvard's Kennedy School, and a Distinguished Alumni Award from Yale. The Congressional Black Caucus hailed her as a rising star. Most meaningfully, FBI agents, current and retired, thanked her directly. One letter she later shared read, "In 30 years at the Bureau, I've seen tough times. But the idea of Kash Patel leading us was terrifying. You didn't just stop a bad appointment. You defended the integrity of law enforcement." The Crockett-Patel hearing soon entered pop culture. Saturday Night Live spoofed it with Egon Woodham as Crockett and Benedict Cumberbatch as Patel. The viral line, "Mr. Patel, were you also on the grassy knoll?" drew millions of views. Late-night hosts followed suit. Stephen Colbert called it the cleanest takedown of a political career since last week. Trevor Noah quipped, "Patel's memoir should be shelved under fantasy, right between Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings." Book sales of Government Gangsters collapsed. Amazon reviews turned comedic. One read, 5 stars as fiction, 0 stars as nonfiction. Meanwhile, Crockett turned down book offers, focusing on her legislative work. Journalists also reflected on their role. Outlets that had previously quoted Patel without verification issued corrections. The Columbia Journalism Review published an essay titled, "The Crockett Standard: What Reporters Can Learn from Real Accountability." Legal experts suggested Patel's statements could expose him to defamation suits. Within a week, former FBI lawyer Lisa Page announced she was exploring legal action. "He's caused real harm," her lawyer said. "Now that his credibility is gone, accountability must follow." Scholars noted the hearing might redefine congressional oversight. For years, confirmation hearings had become performative. Crockett's method, factual, disciplined, prepared, showed another way. She didn't need theatrics, wrote Princeton's Julian Zelizer. She relied on precision, preparation, and truth. Abroad, allies quietly expressed relief. The idea of someone with Patel's record leading the FBI was deeply, Worrying, a European intelligence official told the Financial Times. Congresswoman Crockett did the international community a favor. Over the following weeks, the hearing's legacy solidified. To Crockett, someone became slang for dismantling falsehoods with facts. Crockett herself remained focused on her work, but was appointed to high-profile committees and consulted by senior Democrats. Even some Republicans admitted respect for her professionalism. In a Time magazine profile, she reflected, "I didn't set out to end anyone's career. I set out to ask tough questions and get real answers. The fact that he couldn't provide them isn't on me. It's on him." She continued, "We live in an era where people think confidence can replace truth." That hearing proved facts still matter. When you seek public trust, you must back your claims with evidence. Despite online threats requiring extra security, she stayed resolute. "I became a lawyer to fight for justice, and a congresswoman to fight for my country. If doing my job upsets people, so be it." As new controversies emerged, the Crockett-Patel hearing remained a benchmark, a moment when preparation defeated propaganda, and truth outlasted spin. Some tried to rewrite history, but the footage didn't lie. Anyone could watch Patel falter under simple questioning. In the aftermath, Trump nominated a new FBI candidate, one with genuine law enforcement credentials, and the hearings proceeded smoothly. The long-term impact on Crockett's career is still unfolding, but she's already established as a major voice in Democratic politics. When asked about future ambitions, she simply said, "I'm focused on doing my job well. The future will take care of itself. Whatever comes next." Jasmine Crockett has already made history. Through diligence and discipline, she stopped an unqualified nominee, exposed falsehoods, and proved that real oversight still works. Her story will be studied for years, not just for its viral moments, but for what it represented: standards, truth, and the enduring value of preparation. In an age of misinformation, her example reminds us, facts matter, evidence matters, and accountability matters. Crockett proved that asking the right questions, calmly, confidently, and persistently, still holds power in democracy.